With over 40,000 outlets worldwide, Subway is the top fast food restaurant, but since 2016, they have been closing many of their restaurants. While they were once the fastest growing franchise in the world, a lot of things have gone wrong over the last couple of decades, and here are 10 reasons why Subway will cease to exist sooner or later. Subway started out as a small sandwich shop in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and was founded by Fred DeLuca in 1965. In order to start the business, DeLuca borrowed $1,000 from a family friend called Peter Buck and paid tribute to him by calling the shop Pete Super Submarines. Initially, his goal was to earn enough money for tuition for medical school, and even though neither the first nor the second restaurants became financially successful, they continued to expand the business. In 1968, the restaurant's name was changed to Subway, and they began franchising. By 1974, there were 16 Subways throughout Connecticut, and 10 years later, they also opened locations on the West Coast and across the United States. During the 1980s and 90s, Subway expanded to the Middle East and Europe, and they also began opening stores in Walmarts. By 2002, Subway had surpassed the number of McDonald's locations, but it turned out that the focus on restaurant count rather than location was a pretty bad decision, and this kind of leadership eventually affected the company negatively. After Fred DeLuca died of leukemia in 2015, his sister Susan Greco became president and CEO of Subway and wasted no time addressing the situation. While her brother had been obsessed with having the most locations of any chain, Greco began restructuring Subway in 2016 and closed many of the less profitable stores. For a while, Subway was one of the most popular fast food places, and the company used their incredible success during the 80s and 90s to open a lot of new restaurants. However, the rapid expansion oversaturated the market as the chain was opening locations on nearly every corner. At one point, they had over 27,000 restaurants across the US alone, creating competition within the same company. This, along with a bad economy, led to some of the restaurants being more of a burden rather than an asset to the franchise, and with Subway's only strategy being to open even more restaurants, things eventually had to go downhill. As mentioned, Subway started expanding like crazy in the 80s and 90s, and for a while buying a Subway franchise was a pretty good opportunity for many small business owners who didn't have a lot of capital. But starting in 1995, many of these franchisees launched lawsuits claiming that Subway misrepresented their asset value and they were being forced out of their own business due to questionable practices by the management. A study found that the Subway franchise was one of the key examples of pretty much every abuse possible because Subway corporate oversees every location to the smallest details, using inspectors to ensure that every store fulfills their standards. However, it turned out that these inspectors were sometimes other Subway competitors who would at times close a store to eliminate the competition. Back in 1965, when Subway first opened its doors, there was very little competition from sandwich shops. Aside from Big John's Steak and Onion in Detroit and Blimpie in New Jersey, Subway basically had a monopoly on fast food submarines and sandwiches for decades, which is how they got so successful in the first place and expanded the franchise so rapidly. Then, in the 80s, Quiznos came along, who pretty much offered the same menu but with variations like toasted bread, which Subway easily adjusted to by simply adding the option for their customers to toast their buns as well. However, soon other sandwich restaurants opened as well, and today there are several popular submarine chains like Charlie's Philly Steaks in the Midwest, Jimmy John's in Illinois, and Firehouse Subs in Florida, as well as many independent restaurants that also specialize in submarines. While Subway had no real competition in Quiznos, things got a little harder once other chains came along, many of which offer a greater variety of items and much better quality. Because Subway failed to innovate their menu, they have lost many customers to other chains and restaurants over the years and saw their profits declining while the others continued to grow. Following the death of Subway's founder Fred DeLuca, the company closed more than 1,000 stores across the US. The new leadership quickly realized that their business has been in decline and bleeding money instead of earning it, so Susan Greco set a revitalizing and marketing plan in motion in 2018. This plan was designed to improve the customer experience, introducing things like digital menu boards and a mobile app, along with a loyalty program to help bring customers back to their restaurants. However, there were some technical difficulties when Subway Subway first launched their app, and as it turns out, their My Way rewards program is not as great as it might seem at first glance. Customers will earn 4 tokens for each dollar spent, receiving a $2 reward when they hit 200 tokens, which is not a good deal at all if you do the math, as it means that for every $50 you spend, you will only receive a $2 reward. So it looks like Subway created their rewards program with its own interests in mind rather than those of customers. If you advertise with the fact that your sandwiches are a foot long, you better make sure that they actually are, since someone will take out the measuring tape sooner or later. Unfortunately, Subway didn't pay attention to the actual size of their subs, and the scam was uncovered in 2007 when an Arizona-based television station reported that 3 of Subway's giant sub sandwiches were not actually 3 feet long, but only 2 feet 8 inches. This led to a decline in sales as a lot of customers decided to turn their backs on the fast food chain. Not learning from this mistake, Subway had to endure another scandal like this in 2013 with the foot-long sub, which turned out to be shorter than 12 inches and led to a lot of backlash. As a response, Subway decided to claim that the foot-long sub was more of a trademark rather than an actual foot-long sandwich, and they even tried to sue other businesses who were using the term foot-long in advertising. However, Subway hadn't even trademarked the term yet and only submitted the application after all the drama had already started. And in the end, they weren't successful, as the court determined that the term was too generic and can therefore be used by anyone, though anyone who does use it shouldn't be surprised if customers actually expect their foot-long sandwiches to be a foot long. Subway may have been one of the first places to come up with the idea of fresh fast food, but they didn't really live up to their slogan "Eat Fresh." The slogan was based on the concept that their sandwiches were created in front of the customer with fresh ingredients, and they even called their employees sandwich artists. However, the food Subway offers is actually highly processed and not that fresh, as many Subway restaurants only receive shipments of produce once a week. While corporate has denied these claims, managers and employees have gone even further and claim that the produce is also often near the expiry date when they get it. Realizing they needed to change their slogan, Subway introduced a new marketing campaign called Founded on Fresh in 2015. This campaign focused on the chain's history and on the quality of their food, mentioning fat content, calories, and weight loss benefits to appeal to health-conscious customers. But Subway was a little late with the change, as too many customers had already lost trust in the chain and moved on due to concerns over Subway's highly processed meats and sauces. Despite taking pride in offering fresh food, a 2017 investigation by Canada's CBC Consumer Affairs show Marketplace found that the chicken from Subway restaurants was not 100% chicken. Tests revealed that only about 42 to 56% of the supposed meat was actual chicken, while the rest was soy, which the restaurants did not list as part of the ingredients in their chicken sandwiches. Subway argued that the soy proportion was less than 1% and that the findings by CBC were false and did not coincide with the actual amount of soy in their product. They called CBC's report false and misleading and demanded a retraction, which CBC refused, saying the tests were done by credible experts. Subway then tried to change their strategy and claimed that the ingredients in the US stores differ from those in Canada. They also tried to sue the CBC, the reporter, and 2 producers for $210 million, alleging they had acted recklessly and malicious and without just cause. However, no matter how high or low the amount of soy in Subway's chicken actually is, the fact that they did not reveal all the ingredients in their chicken remains, and customers obviously don't like being lied to, which will lead to more losses for the chain. One of the worst things for any business is a reputation-damaging lawsuit, and Subway has had a couple of really big ones. In 1999, for example, 32 customers in Seattle contracted hepatitis A after eating food contaminated with the virus at 2 Subway outlets, and an investigation then found that the staff at these restaurants not only failed to use plastic gloves during food preparation, but didn't even wash their hands. The victims filed a class action lawsuit, which was eventually resolved for $1.6 million. An even bigger scandal shook Subway in 2015 and besmirched the fast food chain's name even more. Some of you may remember Jared Fogle, who became the company's spokesperson after claiming that he lost 200 pounds thanks in part to eating Subway sandwiches. He then started giving talks on healthy living and appeared in advertisements for Subway, before the company cut all ties with him in 2015 when he was charged with child molestation and possession of child pornography. He later pleaded guilty and was sentenced to more than 15 years in prison, while Subway was left to work on fixing their reputation yet again. The trend towards healthier eating habits started a long time ago, and more fast food chains are adjusting their menus to appeal to a wider range of customers. The only chain that has been lagging far behind others is Subway, as they have always been very slow to change in every respect. From their decor to their menu, little has changed over the past decades, and they seem to avoid anything that is even the slightest bit experimental. Subway were the last ones to offer breakfast and wraps, and their lack of innovation has made it pretty hard to win over customers. Today's potential customers are a generation that is incredibly conscious, not only about what they eat, but also about what is actually inside their food. Saying your food is fresh and low calorie just isn't enough these days, as many millennials are more environmentally conscious and are looking for food that is locally produced or free trade, non-GMO, plant-based, and free of antibiotics. Even McDonald's has phased out artificial ingredients, while Subway only began adjusting their menu in 2015, and their reluctance to follow these trends will eventually lead to the company's demise.